Lou Ferrigno was just 3 years old when he lost 80% of his hearing. His hearing aids were broken, and children dubbed him Deaf Louie. His father struck him at home as he sobbed about bullies. Using junkyard trash, he developed muscles so he would never again feel weak. But there was new anguish with accomplishment. Skin burns from Hulk makeup sessions plagued him for 5 years. To keep his daughter from being crushed, he tore his bicep. He is now 71 years old, and his wife of 43 years has left him, saying he scared her with his hulking girth. Lou Ferrigno's tragedy is devastating beyond belief. Although Lou Ferrigno was born in 1951, he had a difficult start in life. During his toddler years, he experienced severe ear infections that did not go away in a week. However, the type that causes irreversible harm. He had lost 75 to 80% of his hearing by the time he was 3. However, the frightening aspect? Until then, nobody knew at all. The only time his parents recognized something was off was when they clapped their hands behind him and received no response. He lived his early years in almost complete silence as a result of that delay, with no one noticing that he was deaf. Hearing aids were installed for him once the physicians eventually sorted it out. It was the 1950s, though. They were not subtle or small. He had wires hanging from large, clumsy boxes that were tied to his chest. Lou detested his appearance. He claimed to have felt like a Martian freak at one point. He could hear a bit more clearly, but not as well, thanks to these gadgets. His speech was already unusual as a result of missing so much early language development. Individuals took notice. And he wasn't treated well by the schoolchildren. He was referred to as Deaf Louie and Deaf Mute. They made fun of the way he spoke. They even struck him in the chest to shatter his hearing aids, and he was powerless to defend himself. He was slow, slender, and little. He turned to comic books as an escape because he frequently felt alone. He read about the Hulk, Spider-Man, and Superman characters with latent power who didn't fit in. School never provided him what those stories did. At home, things weren't much easier. Making excuses was not something his father, Matthew Ferrigno, a strong Brooklyn cop, believed in. Lou's father gave him no consolation when he came home sobbing from bullies. He slapped him. He said, "If you can't fight your own battles, don't come home." When Lou's grades declined due to his inability to lip read from the rear of the classroom, his father locked the gym in the basement. And declared that unless his grades improved, it would remain locked. "My father rejected me because I wasn't ideal," he later claimed. But rather than shattering him, that rejection stoked his flames. His goal was to become so strong that he would never be harmed again. So Lou adjusted. Every lesson he attended, he sat in the front row and became an expert lip reader. He continued even though he was lost if a teacher looked away from writing on the board. At times, he didn't even disclose his deafness to his teachers. He was too embarrassed. He did, however, watch, observe, speculate, and deduce things from people's body language and features. Even though it was tiring, he used tenacity and sheer dedication to get through school. At the age of 13, everything changed in 1964. While watching television, he came across the film Hercules. For Lou, seeing Steve Reeves in the title character was like seeing a real-life superhero. Not only was Reeves strong, he had the appearance of Lou's favorite comic book characters. At that moment, Lou realized what he wanted. Reading about strength wasn't all he wanted to do. He aspired to be it, particularly the Hulk. The Hulk, he once referred to as the Green Santa Claus, was a strong yet gentle man. Lou aspired to be that. His goal was to become strong enough to withstand bullying in the future. But his family couldn't afford the high cost of gyms. His own weights were thus created. He went to the junkyard when he was just 13 years old, filled several old cans with cement, and affixed them to a broomstick. He has never used a barbell before. In order to alleviate the agony, he utilized hinges, joined 2 large wooden boxes together, and even placed a pillow on top. "I had back pain," he remarked. "I did, however, attempt to mimic what I saw in the publications." He continued to exercise in this manner for years. Finally, at the age of 17, he joined R&J Health Club, a legitimate gym. However, he had already constructed a sturdy body by that point using just scrap metal and willpower. However, bodybuilding did not cover the expenses. Thus, in 1969, Lou, then just 17 years old, was hired at a tough Brooklyn sheet metal plant. Back then, it paid a respectable $10 per hour, or roughly $75 today. However, it was noisy, dangerous, and full with equipment that might tear off fingers. The experience was a nightmare for someone who was almost deaf. But Lou needed the money for vitamins and food, so he continued to work. He brought cooked eggs, tuna, and cottage cheese to fuel his workouts while others ate sandwiches. All of that changed one day in 1972. Directly next to Lou, a colleague had his hand crushed by a hydraulic press. The last straw was that. He never returned after leaving. Even though bodybuilding and job stability were unreliable, Lou took a chance and it paid off. Lou Ferrigno stunned everyone in 1973 when he was just 21 years old. Both Mr. America and Mr. Universe went to him. No one his age had ever done that. He was about 285 pounds in weight and 6 feet 5 inches tall. He appeared enormous in comparison to other bodybuilders, but his prior survival gave him even more strength. Due to an ear infection as a child, Lou lost the majority of his hearing. Children harassed him. In addition to being stronger, he began exercising weights to make himself feel less isolated. 1 year later, he committed the unimaginable once more. He took home a second Mr. Universe title. He went on to enter Mr. Olympia in 1975. Despite losing, his third-place finish elevated him to the status of a top athlete. It all altered in the same year. Pumping Iron, a documentary, started filming. It came after the competition between Arnold Schwarzenegger and Lou. It was Lou's size. Despite being almost 50 pounds larger than him, Arnold had an advantage. He engaged in mental games. Prior to the competition, he wanted to have breakfast with Lou and his parents. Arnold grinned and remarked, "Lou just needs another month to be ready," while enjoying coffee and eggs. He then boasted that he had won 6 times, as though he had already done so. Lou later referred to Arnold as conceited, but his strategies were effective. Lou finished third. This was Arnold's 6th championship. Lou had 2 Mr. Universe victories, but he was broke. Bodybuilding was unpaid. Lou earned $10 an hour for 3 years working at a metal shop in Brooklyn. By 1975, he was forced to stop competing. Even with prize money, he was still in top physical condition. Lou and Carla Green were married in 1980. The only money he had saved was $5,000. Carla possessed $7,000. It was that. "We built our home on our money, and we built it from nothing," she once said. The scale of Lou was unprecedented at the time. He had larger arms than Arnold, measuring 23.5 inches. He had a 900-pound deadlift capacity, but no one ever verified it. However, his size and strength were genuine. Typically, tall bodybuilders appeared lanky. Lou did not. Despite his size, he maintained his equilibrium. All of this occurred prior to the period of high steroid use. His muscles were developed via discipline, hard work, and a desire to establish his identity. In 1975, Lou stunned audiences once more at the age of barely 24. He left the bodybuilding scene. He had no wounds. He was not defeated. He simply had no money to continue. Most contests only rewarded $1,000. Everything changed again in 1977. The creators of The Incredible Hulk wanted a huge actor to portray the Green Beast. Initially, Arnold Schwarzenegger was called in. Pure muscle, he stood 6 feet 1 inch tall. But he wasn't tall enough, they said. They then attempted Richard Kiel, the 7 foot 2 inch actor who portrayed Jaws in the James Bond films. They even started shooting with him. But then an odd thing occurred. When the director's little son came to the set, he gave Kiel's costume one glance. Without hesitation, he informed his father, "That's not the Hulk." It all changed. This time, they began searching for someone who resembled the comic book Hulk. Scary, ripped, and huge. Meanwhile, Lou Ferrigno was preparing for the Mr. Olympia in 1977. He unexpectedly received an audition call. They told him to just be like the Hulk after painting him green when he arrived. Lou claimed that when he snarled and acted like a beast in front of the camera, they immediately hired him. He took the role, giving up his chance to compete in the Olympia. His life was completely altered by just one choice. The actual job, however, had not yet begun. Makeup took over 4 hours to do before each day of filming. Not all of it was paint. It adhered to everything and was thick, green pancake makeup that was chalky. There were 6 layers added. Then the custom-made teeth, nose, and forehead were added. The most unpleasant aspect? The white lenses in contact. They were so painful that he could only wear them for 15 minutes at a time. Lou wore full Hulk makeup for 20 hours in a row during the pilot. Yes, 20. To remove the paint, he had to install a special shower in his trailer because it was so intense. The green would remain even after that. His toenails remained green for half a year. The physical cost was severe. Lou once tore a muscle in a sequence in which the Hulk lifted a car in 1978. On sweltering days when filming took place outside, he also suffered chemical burns from the green makeup. The weight fluctuations in temperatures above 100 degrees Fahrenheit were also insane. For interviews, he had to quickly slim down after bulking up for certain parts. His dietitian cautioned that it was risky. In between seasons, he required treatment because his skin broke out from the prosthesis. Even though he was only 30, he once told People magazine in 1981 that his body had aged to 42 due to stress, chemicals, and sleep deprivation. Lou, however, pushed himself more than anybody else. 95% of his stunts were his own. He was indifferent to the fact that it violated CBS's safety regulations. He thought no stuntman could pull off the Hulk stunt. Despite suffering a back injury after running through an improperly constructed false wall, he continued to film. Another night around 4 in the morning, a scene required the Hulk to use wires to flip a car. The machinery malfunctioned. Lou was smeared in green paint, angry, and exhausted. "You don't believe I'm going to flip that car over?" he yelled. He then used all of his strength to flip the car himself. "I believe I truly transformed into the Hulk that evening," he stated. He continues to experience pain from that back injury. He has no regrets, though, if you ask him if it was worthwhile. Because of his hearing, things became much more difficult. After ear infections at age 3, Lou lost the majority of his hearing. In order to follow instructions on set, he had to read lips. In peaceful situations, that was okay, but in action shots, it was a complete mess. When a scene ended, he had to guess because directors couldn't call cut. Mid-shoot, his hearing aids would occasionally break. And he overlooked crucial safety signals. In the end, he wore 2 at once just to be alert. And yet he continued. A lot of fans were unaware that the Hulk wasn't always the one who roared and growled. Ted Cassidy, Lurch from the Addams Family, initially provided the voice. Following Cassidy's death in 1979, Charles Napier assumed leadership. Until decades later, Lou was not the official voice. For the Avengers, Lou's voice was ultimately used in 2012. Mark Ruffalo's shouts and growls were mixed with his own. Additionally, in 2015's Age of Ultron, this indicated that Lou Ferrigno had been the voice of the Hulk for 37 years, which was the longest of any member. But it wasn't easy being famous. Instead of Lou, fans adored the Hulk. Although they approached him with wide eyes and excitement, they never addressed him by name. Under the paint, they failed to see the man. He began to become weary of that. He once remarked that it was weird to be renowned for a character he couldn't even articulate. Since he was a young boy reading comic novels, he had envisioned himself as a hero. Though no one knew who he truly was, he was now one. He was isolated even on the set. It had heated, heavy makeup. Between takes, he had to remain in an air-conditioned trailer to prevent overheating. This implied that Bixby sat alone, perspiring, and waiting while the others joked and grew closer. Being misinterpreted and constantly on the outside, it reflected the Hulk's inner loneliness. Lou Ferrigno was prepared for his dream to come true in 1983. He had always admired the original Hercules, Steve Reeves, and now he was playing the renowned tyrant. The title of the film was Hercules. However, it was unlike anything from classical Greece. Robots, lasers, and crazy sci-fi effects from the 1980s were all over it. According to Ferrigno, he was in the best shape of his life and trained harder than ever. His muscles were massive. They appeared to be about to burst, according to some. However, something seemed strange when the film debuted on August 26. The voice was not Ferrigno's. Every syllable he spoke had been dubbed by someone else. Mark Smith, however, he felt that was insufficient justification for taking away his voice. Later on, he expressed regret, saying that it was a shame because it could have become a classic. Even more painful was witnessing his lifelong competitor, Arnold Schwarzenegger, endure the same dubbing in Hercules in New York years prior. But as Lou's career stagnated, Arnold's took off. Hollywood began labeling Ferrigno a one-note actor after the movie's failure. The situation was worse behind the scenes. Lou and Carla Green were married in 1980. All they had was $12,000. Lou brought $5,000, Carla brought $7,000. It was startling, particularly for someone who had just portrayed the Hulk in a popular television series that ran from 1977 to 1982. However, wealth did not follow celebrity. Lou was a sheet metal worker in Brooklyn who made $10 an hour before he became famous. It was a cruel job. In a machine, a guy once lost his hand. The same week, Lou resigned. The money quickly dried up when the Hulk exhibition concluded. Then Carla took over. To start over, she arranged his appearances, became his manager, and traveled with him. She then stated, "We built our home on our money from nothing." Their breaking point was in 1991. Lou received an offer from wrestling mogul Vince McMahon to join his new World Bodybuilding Federation for $500,000 a year, or around $875,000 today. Lou declined, but the fact that he nearly said yes demonstrated how dire things had become. Ferrigno attempted to go back into bodybuilding the same year. 17 years had passed since his last contest. The largest offer ever made to a bodybuilder was presented to him by McMahon. $500,000 a year. Arnold never made anything like that. However, a catch existed. For a period of 3 months in a row, McMahon required all athletes to pass drug testing. The concept did not sit well with Lou. However, Lou received $250,000 in cash from bodybuilding icon Joe Weider. And $250,000 in advertisements for his athletic gear brand. Lou made the Weider choice. He made his stage debut at Mr. Olympia in 1992. He was 41 years old. He came in 12th. It was more than decent after taking so long a break. It was a return. However, it wasn't on stage or television that Ferrigno's most impactful moment occurred. At home, it took place in 2020. Near his truck, his daughter Shauna was playing. As a 1,000-pound air compressor overturned, Lou sprang forward in a moment and seized the machine. Instead of letting it crush her, he tore his biceps clean off the bone. He described it as sounding like a shirt tearing. He had a childlike arm as he looked down. The muscle had coiled itself into his underarm. One of the worst injuries a bodybuilder may sustain is this one. His heart was broken. It was a matter of his career. However, he was sent to a surgeon by NFL player Bubba Smith. The following day, Ferrigno had surgery. After 6 agonizing months, he returned. Once more, he was able to deadlift 600 pounds. He wasn't only powerful. In order to protect his child, he would do everything, including tearing his own body to pieces. Hollywood saw an odd event in the early 1990s. Michael Jackson secretly hired the enormous Green Hulk from television, Lou Ferrigno, as his personal trainer. No one anticipated it. It began because Ferrigno was the only person who could help, according to Jackson's surgeon. It wasn't a fitness stunt or a picture opportunity. Lou helped Jackson train because he was unable to do it in public. He came home to Jackson 3 or 4 times a week. But it had nothing to do with lifting weights. It covered back problems, stretching, pain management, flexibility, and light treadmill exercises. Balanced balls and meticulously planned routines helped Jackson stay on stage without losing his mind. While preparing for major performances, Jackson occasionally only ate once a day and followed a strict vegetarian diet. Over the years, a more profound form emerged. They spoke of their early years. Both had fathers that were strict. They were both pushed vigorously. One was the TV's strongest man. The world's most well-known performer was the other. Jackson showed Ferrigno how to moonwalk in the private gym one day. It felt like astronomy, Lou said. Jackson would play hide-and-seek with his kids after working out, reverting to his childlike behavior. Ferrigno saw the king of pop turn into Mr. Mom. Ferrigno's existence, however, was not limited to Hollywood. At 53, he stunned everyone once more in his 50s. In a different kind of clothing, he dressed like a real police officer. It's not a stunt or a TV role. He completed first aid training, obtained his guns qualification, passed background checks, trained, and took tests. He was promoted to Los Angeles County's reserve deputy sheriff position. Not only that, it was honorary. It was serious to him. In the NYPD, his father had held the rank of lieutenant. This felt personal, therefore. Lou also served in San Luis Obispo over time. Then Texas's Irving. The badge had been worn by him 3 times by 2018. He said that not being famous gave him any advantages. He earned everything he accomplished. However, a whole new audience came to know Lou through humor, even though most people only knew him as the Hulk. In 20 episodes of The King of Queens between 2000 and 2007, he appeared as himself, not the superhero version. This Lou was gentler and funnier. Joking with Kevin James, receiving giggles from live crowds, ridiculing his own celebrity, and enjoying it all. He claimed that because he experiences the same thing in daily life, he could relate to the show. The Incredible Hulk gained popularity among fans who weren't raised with him for a completely other reason. The intimidating muscular man was now merely a large, humorous neighbor. Next came reality television. Ferrigno joined The Celebrity Apprentice in 2012. At that point, chaos ensued. Fights started. The tension was tremendous. On the screen, one moment exploded. Lou and another competitor, according to comedian Lisa Lampanelli, were worthless since they only had 5 brain cells between them. Lou lost it after a heated disagreement in the boardroom. "Lisa is fortunate not to be a male," he replied, "for if she were, I would hurl her straight through that window." It grew worse. He later stated on live TV that her brain was impacted by her lack of exercise. Despite the turmoil, his team managed to raise $50,000 for the Muscular Dystrophy Association. In one video that went popular, he even danced while mopping. In episode 9, after 8 episodes, he was sacked. After only 3 years, things at home became unpleasant. Lou sued his own brother twice in 2015. The company Andrew Ferrigno workout equipment was owned and operated by his brother Andrew. Claimed that was unfair. It was unrelated to him, but it used their last name. In the initial litigation, a disclaimer was requested. In the second, Andrew was ordered to stop using the phrase exercise. Lou was reported to be worth $12 million at the time. Andrew felt enraged. "Why do you need to suck me dry?" he asked TMZ. "I'm really confused." Andrew finally caved in. He changed the company's name to Andrew Ferrigno Equipment. Most famously, Lou Ferrigno played the original Hulk in the 1970s television series, but his voice also appeared in the current Marvel films. Behind the scenes, Ferrigno was shouting and growling in the 2008 film The Incredible Hulk. Additionally, it was a combination of Mark Ruffalo and others when Hulk mocked Loki and dubbed him a small god in The Avengers in 2012. Marvel's sound effects combined with Ruffalo's tone and Ferrigno's voice to create a one sound. That continued until 2015, when Age of Ultron was released. In Thor: Ragnarok, however, Marvel stopped utilizing Ferrigno as the Hulk began speaking more like a human. He took it seriously. He believed the role was becoming too distant from the ferocious animal he had previously played. Ferrigno was concealing an unnoticed struggle off-screen. After a severe ear infection at age 3, he lost 85% of his hearing. His hearing aids, which he got by the age of 4, were never very effective. His lifelong speech pattern was influenced by his inability to hear his own voice. He was perceived as having an odd accent. He gave them reason to believe it. He disclosed to some people that he had a speech impairment. The truth hurt more. He was unable to hear well enough to correctly enunciate words. He continued to lose his hearing. He only recognized 18% of words by the time he was in his late 60s. He still refused to have a cochlear implant. He felt afraid. Until a buddy received one, their word recognition improved from 12% to 98%. That was the turning point. Ferrigno eventually underwent the procedure in February 2021, at the age of 69. In addition to amplifying noises, the implant communicated directly with his brain. He increased his word recognition from 18% to 65% after 6 weeks. Across the room, he could hear his grandchildren sobbing upstairs, the ticking of appliances, the distant sound of a motor engine, and voices. He dubbed the encounter rebirth. The ability to hear things that most people take for granted was something he had never experienced before. He claimed that this clarity was unheard of with hearing aids. He now warns people against waiting as long as he did. But everyone was surprised by what followed. After 43 years of marriage, his wife Carla, 74, filed for divorce in October 2023. She said Lou was isolating and dominating her. He limited her movement within the residence, according to court documents, limiting her to 2 single rooms. She said that despite her dementia diagnosis, he refused to make the house safer for her. Additionally, she said that he dominated her by using his stature and power. Her attorneys characterized Lou's behavior as a component of a Machiavellian plot to keep their $2.9 million California mansion and keep her in the marriage. Lou said his primary concern was her health and refuted the accusations. The situation then deteriorated in early 2025. Now 71, Lou sued his sister-in-law and his own daughter, Shauna, 42. He said they were abusing the elderly. Despite the fact that Carla had been declared mentally incapable of handling her funds, they allegedly attempted to take $500,000 out of her account in March by taking her to a bank. After halting the transaction, the bank got in touch with Lou. He claimed that by deactivating cameras and undermining the caretakers he had hired, Shauna was using Carla against him. To prevent them from accessing their accounts, he requested a restraining order, claiming Carla was being coerced. Lou wasn't entirely innocent, though. Carla was having an affair with a lady named Lisa, according to court documents. She openly, and not in secret, said that Lou went with Lisa. Spent most of his time away from their home and accompanied her to activities. According to her, Lou was more concerned about losing their home in a divorce than mending their union. Lou's texts even expressed that dread. Carla's lawyers used this to demonstrate that Lou wasn't merely looking out for Carla. He was attempting to defend himself. The most terrifying moment was when Carla explained how Lou supposedly used his enormous 6 feet 5 inches Hulk-like frame to threaten her violently. She claimed that he screamed at her while standing over her and reminded her that he was the Hulk. She said that rather than providing protection, he scared people with his stature and strength. She claimed that after calling her selfish, he informed her that she was ruining his life and that he would no longer care for her. These were more than a dispute. They were plays on power. Her charges were severe, especially for those who had looked up to Lou as a representation of discipline and fortitude. Although Lou Ferrigno was viewed as a real-life superhero for many years, beneath his legendary green muscles and booming roars was a man struggling with betrayal, control, grief, and silence, both from those closest to him and from himself. There is more to Lou Ferrigno's story than the Hulk. It's about what occurs when anger spills over from the costume into the real world.